Good afternoon, my Real News Media TV family. Welcome back to the channel for another news update. And in the news this afternoon, teen charged with a pulling knife on cops. A 14-year-old child has found herself in trouble with the law after she allegedly breached a curfew which was declared in her home community and then reportedly threatened a police officer with a knife after she was instructed to go home. The child, who was charged along with her mother, pleaded guilty to breach of curfew order when she appeared in the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court on Thursday. According to the case against the child and her mother, on March 21, a 6 p.m. and a 6 a.m. curfew was in effect in Harborview when a police patrol encountered the child on the road. She was ordered to go home but refused to comply. "Anna, dad, come lick me," she reportedly told the police before allegedly pulling a knife from her waistband and pointing it in the direction of the officers. The child's behavior reportedly took place in the presence of her mother. Both were subsequently arrested for breach of curfew. The child was additionally charged with being armed with an offensive weapon and assault at a common law. Parish Judge Jacqueline Wilcott requested a social inquiry report for the mother and the daughter to help to decide the sentencing. However, the child pleaded not guilty to being armed with an offensive weapon and assault at the common law. The defendants are to return to court on June 27 when the case is expected to conclude. Drivers urged to observe and stop at the pedestrian crossings. The Jamaica Constabulary Force is urging the motoring public to follow the rules of the Road Traffic Act as it regards the pedestrian crossings. Head of the Public Safety and the Traffic Enforcement Branch, Assistant Commissioner of Police Gary McKenzie, said the police continue to have challenges with motorists and the pedestrian crossings. The offense is failing to observe and stop at a pedestrian crossing, because you can't stop unless you observe that someone is about to cross, and you can't start to slow down to stop when someone is on the pedestrian crossing. The time to observe is when someone is in the vicinity of the pedestrian crossing, ACP McKenzie explained. He was speaking on the Police Civilian Oversight Authority Pandecon podcast recently. ACP McKenzie noted that observing when a pedestrian is in the vicinity of the crossing is not open for interpretation but is very clear according to the law. In the vicinity means that they are on the sidewalk, adjacent or in line with the pedestrian crossing, or very near to, or if there is no sidewalk, then the person may be on the verge or the harder shoulder. Once someone is observed in that area, it is incumbent on the motorist to slow down and stop and allow the person to cross, he stated. He further noted that in most instances, there is a stop line at a pedestrian crossing, while estimating that approximately 85% of the crossings have this line. He stated that it was crucial that the driver stop behind the line. What some people do, they go almost on the pedestrian crossing to stop. That can't be the case because you are driving fair in the pedestrians and they really don't know what you are doing, ACP McKenzie told the podcast. He further urged the motorist to follow the rules and not to drive over the crossing while someone is attempting to cross. People are impatient, so while the person is on the pedestrian crossing, they drive off, or as the person passes their lane, they drive off. That is not the recommended approach. As long as the person is on the pedestrian crossing, you ought not to be passing over it, he said. What if something happens and the person decides to come back? Sometimes someone is crossing from one side and another set of persons who are on the other side see the opportunity and they try to cross at the same time. So the observance is something which is very important, ACP McKenzie noted. Businesses worried amid tension in Spanish Town following killing of alleged gangster. While some businesses have closed their shutters amid tension following the police killing of a reputed Klansman enforcer on Friday, President of the St. Catherine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dennis Robotham, says he's hoping the police can minimize any potential fallout. Robotham told the news business operators have expressed the fear violence could erupt in the older capital. We know that there will be a fallout in commerce when things of this nature take place. Therefore, we hope for the best. This involves a proper intervention and a curtailment by the powers that be, Robotham said. Boy, I am not sure what will be happening, so may I close up the bar and go home. Business operator Millicent Jameson said. Meanwhile, some taxi operators have curtailed their services as they monitor the developments in the St. Catherine capital. Reputed Klansman gang enforcer Sheldon Walters, otherwise known as a Termite, was killed in an alleged shootout with the police on Friday evening. Anger and grief turned to chaos as a group of residents blocked sections of Burke Road, Salt Pond Road, and the Spanish Town bypass. Police personnel from several formations have been busy seeking to restore normality to the St. Catherine North Division. Prime Minister and the Church mourn former MP Princess Laws. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has joined the Jamaica Union Conference in mourning the loss of Princess Laws, a former Jamaica Labour Party Member of Parliament who passed on Saturday morning after ailing for some time. She was 79. Laws made history in the 1980 general election when she defeated the People's National Party candidate Arnold Bertram to claim victory in St. Ann Northwestern, making it the first time the JLP won the constituency. Holness, in a post on social media, said that Laws was a trailblazer in Jamaican public life who left a legacy of compassion, integrity, and commitment. It is with a heavy heart that I extend my deepest condolence to the family, friends, and colleagues of Princess Laws. Her passing marks the end of an era, not only for the Jamaica Union Conference, but for our nation as a whole, he said. Princess Laws' impact will be felt for generations to come, inspiring us all to strive for a better, more inclusive Jamaica. We will forever cherish her memory and to continue to be guided by her example, added Holness. During her time in government, she was in charge of women's affairs and the children's services, making contributions Holness said were invaluable. In the meantime, Jamaica Union Conference in a statement noted that Laws, before serving in the Adventist Church, was a junior minister in the government of Jamaica and a member of the Senate between 1976 and 1989. Additionally, Laws was president of the Inter-American Commission of Women, Organization of American States. After she exited the political arena, she spent more than 20 years working full-time for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. At the Jamaica Union Conference, she served as a public affairs and religious liberty director. She also served as the personal assistant to two former union presidents. Court defeats raise questions about legal advice being given to Prime Minister. The Constitutional Court ruling on Friday in relation to the extension of the tenure of Director of Public Prosecutions, Paul Llewellyn, is the latest in a string of judicial slapdowns for Prime Minister Andrew Holness and his administration. The development has triggered speculation in political and law circles about the quality of the legal advice being given to the Prime Minister. Holness started chalking up losses in the nation's courts nearly a decade ago in 2015. As opposition leader in 2013, he had used unsigned letters of resignation to remove Dr. Christopher Tufton and Arthur Williams from the Senate, replacing them with Ruel Reid and Dr. Nigel Clark. Williams, once a confidant of Holness, took the matter to court and asked the court to declare whether it was legal for Holness to use an undated letter of resignation to revoke his Senate appointment. On February 6, 2015, the Constitutional Court ruled in his favor, declaring that Holness had acted unlawfully. The court declared the letters null and void. The court further declared that by requesting and procuring unsigned letters of resignation and authorization to use them to remove senators, Holness had acted contrary to public policy and inconsistent with the Constitution. While speaking during a church service the following day on February 7, 2015, Holness described the situation in which the Jamaica Labour Party found itself as a regrettable embarrassment and apologized unreservedly to Williams and to Tufton. It is important to acknowledge that if I have done something wrong or my action have been declared wrong, then I have a duty to apologize to those I wronged, Holness said during his address to the congregation at Boulevard Baptist Church in St. Andrew. And so today, I do unreservedly apologize to my colleagues and friends, Arthur and Chris, and should it be shown to me that I need to make corrections, then I have the ultimate duty to preserve the integrity of the Constitution, he added. However, weeks later, Holness took his party and the country by surprise when he appealed the ruling. He lost as the earlier decision was upheld by the Court of Appeal. In April 2019, Holness and the government were again dealt a major blow when the Constitutional Court struck down the much-touted National Identification and Registration Act. The opposition had argued that the important legislation that was decades in the making, spanning several administrations, was being rushed through Parliament with undue haste and its concerns largely ignored. That landmark ruling was handed down via live streaming by the full court, comprising Chief Justice Brian Sykes, Justice Lisa Palmer Hamilton, and Justice David Batts. The Chief Justice said the panel was unanimous in its decision, declaring the NIDS Act as unconstitutional and null and void. Sykes said that having struck down certain aspects relating to privacy issues, such as the collection of biometric data, the remaining portion of the legislation could not stand. The government had touted NIDS as the piece of legislation that would improve the country's national security situation while making it easier for Jamaicans to conduct business. It was a full 2.5 years after it was struck down that the new and significantly amended NIDS Act 2021 was passed in the House of Representatives in October of that year. Since at least 2017, the Holness administration has used the state of emergency as a major plank in its crime-fighting arsenal. While the opposition initially supported the SOEs, it consistently argued that repeated use was unconstitutional and also served to nullify their effect. In December 2018, the opposition dealt a crippling blow to the government's efforts to tame crime, particularly murders, when it withdrew its support for the SOEs. The emergency measure requires a 2/3 majority in both houses of parliament to be extended for up to 3 months after the initial 2 weeks following a declaration. The government was dealt a further blow in September 2020 when Supreme Court Justice Bertram Morrison ruled as unconstitutional the months-long detention of 5 men without a charge under the SOEs. The court also ruled that the detention orders issued by the Minister of National Security were unlawful. Some of the men had been held without a charge or bail for up to 1 year. In the 64-page judgment, Justice Morrison stated that there was no justification presented by the government to facilitate a proportional assessment of any legitimate objective behind the claimant's detention. This I find to be the egregious overstepping of the bounds of the power of the executive, he said. Justice Morrison ruled that the use of the orders for the detention of the men for criminal cases without a proper review breached the doctrine of separation of powers. The government appealed the decision, but it was thrown out by the Court of Appeal in July 2023. The appeals court said it had no jurisdiction to make any changes to the findings made by the Supreme Court with respect to the habeas corpus application that was made on behalf of the men who were eventually determined to have been unlawfully detained under the SOEs. The appeal court also determined that the government was bound by the decision of the Supreme Court regarding the SOEs, regardless of its reasons for disagreeing with it. The government had filed an appeal against some of the findings in a September 2020 judgment by Justice Bertram Morrison, in which he stated that the detention of 4 men under the SOEs was unlawful. Morrison had also ruled that the situation which led to the detention of the objectors, the men detained in custody, does not qualify as an emergency or satisfy the situation in sections 22, 25 of the Constitution. Further, the judge said the claimant's constitutional rights and the Constitution itself are being breached by the current detention and executive detention system. The men were released from police custody when the SOEs ended on August 17, 2020, the day before nomination day activities for the September 3 general election.